Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to be deconstructing a really fascinating viral microfable, and it's one that perfectly captures this totally timeless tension we all experience, It's that intense battle between our rigid, everyday expectations of perfection and the sudden, chaotic, and totally unexpected arrival of pure joy. If you're someone who meticulously plans every single detail of your day, or, if you've ever felt incredibly frustrated when things just don't go exactly right, well, stick around, because this analysis is going to give you a whole lot to think about.
Okay, let's dive into this. A poor barber gave the king the funniest haircut ever, and everyone burst into laughter. This instantly sets the stage, treating our explainer today almost like an engaging classic storybook. It establishes this massive contrast right out of the gate. On one hand, you've got a king, right? A figure who literally represents absolute authority, high status, and a strict demand for absolute perfection. And then, on the other hand, you have a poor barber, someone with incredibly low status, but who suddenly holds a tremendous amount of power just because he's holding scissors near the royal head. This single, simple sentence completely hooks us, because it breaks all the rules of royal decorum. It sets up a scenario that is just totally ripe for disaster. So let's look at the sequence of events that actually led to this crazy moment. Step 1. The talkative barber. We can all vividly picture this, right? The barber isn't just cutting hair. He's endlessly chatting, just filling the room with stories and noise. Which naturally leads directly to Step 2. The king nods off. Honestly, this is such a wonderfully humanizing moment. The most powerful man in the entire kingdom is just lulled to sleep, becoming completely vulnerable right there in the barber's chair. Then comes Step 3, the inevitable consequence, the botched cut, executed while the king is totally out cold. And finally, Step 4, the awakening. This sequence really methodically and deliberately stretches out the narrative, letting us see exactly how a simple, everyday personality trait, like just being overly talkative, created the absolute perfect storm for a royal blunder.
And this brilliantly illustrates the intense physical comedy in our story. Just imagine waking up to this dramatic visual contrast. One side of his beard is perfectly trimmed. We're talking the absolute epitome of royal grooming and precision. But the other side? It's still long, wild, and totally untouched. Put yourself in the king's shoes for a second. Imagine waking up, rubbing your face, and feeling this bizarre asymmetry. It's literally a walking visual gag. The contrast here is just immense, showing us that this wasn't some minor fixable slip of the scissors. It's an undeniable, impossible-to-hide, half-and-half masterpiece of pure failure.
The royal guards gasp. Really try to imagine the heavy, terrifying silence that drops over that throne room in that split second. The guards, whose literal job is to protect the king's dignity just as much as his life, are completely frozen in shock. The stakes here are incredibly high. And what does the barber do in the face of this impending doom? The barber simply hands over a mirror. It's a desperate split-second reaction. He doesn't try to cover it up. He doesn't make excuses. Honestly, he can't. He just holds up the mirror and lets brutal reality hit the king. The tension in this specific frozen moment is absolutely palpable.
So, what will the king do? I want you to mentally put yourself right there in that throne room. Let's say you're a guard holding your breath, or maybe you're the barber probably trembling in absolute fear. What is the expected royal wrath for such a massive, embarrassing, and highly public blunder? Typically, rulers in these types of fables aren't exactly known for their patience or their forgiveness when they're made to look foolish in front of their entire court. As a reader or a viewer, we are automatically bracing ourselves for the worst possible outcome. We expect shouting, we expect chains, we're waiting for severe, life-altering consequences.
But here is the magnificent twist. The king looks at his reflection in the mirror, and instead of exploding in a fit of anger, he actually laughs louder than anyone else in the room and shouts, "No one has ever made me laugh this hard." The sheer booming energy of this totally unexpected reaction completely shatters the tension in the room. All that built-up fear, the gasping guards, the trembling barber, it literally all instantly evaporates into pure, uproarious laughter. It's a complete and delightful subversion of everything we were just bracing for.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive gap between what we anticipated and the actual reward. We naturally assume severe punishment, maybe even banishment. That's pretty much standard operating procedure for defacing a monarch. But the actual outcome? The barber receives a pouch of gold. And even more fascinating, he gets named the official royal storyteller. The king actually recognized that the barber's true talent wasn't grooming at all. It was his talkative nature. The king took this massive, humiliating failure and pivoted it, rewarding the barber for his inadvertent ability to bring genuine joy to the court.
So the crucial point is, sometimes, a good laugh is worth more than perfect work. Let's really unpack this explicitly stated moral for a second. We so often live our lives in a state where we demand absolute perfectionism, from ourselves, from our work, and from the people around us. We are constantly striving for that perfectly trimmed beard, so to speak. But this story completely challenges that mindset. It asks us to actually weigh the rigid value of perfection against the spontaneous, healing value of genuine joy. Because honestly, sometimes the mistake, the flaw, or the totally botched project is exactly the pattern interrupt we need to just stop taking ourselves so seriously and simply laugh at the pure absurdity of life.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the broader context of where this story actually came from. We see a modern call to action, like, comment, share, and follow. And this meta-narrative is pretty brilliant. It takes a piece of timeless, ancient-feeling wisdom, a literal fable about a king and a barber, and packages it expertly with a very modern drive to build a digital community. It really just proves that human nature hasn't changed at all. The exact same concepts of grace, humor, and subverted expectations that make a great folktale are exactly what drive engagement, shares, and real connection in our modern digital landscape today.
Which brings us to a lingering thought I really want to leave you with today. Would you demand perfect work or appreciate the laugh? I want to directly challenge you to reflect on your own expectations as you go about your week. The next time someone makes a totally harmless mistake, or a project goes slightly off the rails, or your perfectly laid out plans just fall apart, how will you react? Will you default to that expected wrath and demand perfection, or will you find the gold in the moment, shift your perspective, and just appreciate the laugh? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep that question in the back of your mind today. Catch you next time.